About 20 years ago, there was a house for rent or for sale on our block. And we were hoping to get a nice family to move into that house. And we sure lucked out. We got a very nice family, and they have been a great addition to the neighborhood. And about 10 years ago, I saw Lauren out in the street and we got chatting, and I said, "So what are you up to, Lauren?" And she said, "Well, I'm working on a project, and it is very involved." And little did I know what that project would turn into. And I'm really looking forward to hearing all of it. I've heard parts of it. I know Gail's heard parts of it. So without making this introduction too long, Lauren, it's yours. Thank you.
The ocean gets mean that night. At first, the boat rises and falls. Each time, my stomach travels up to my throat, only to drop without warning back to my bowels. My brother and I throw up. Vomit covers both our chests. My little sister's body shakes next to me, and her fear seeps through me like osmosis. Panic consumes me. Hot tears sting my eyes. But I fight them back, and I don't cry. I must be brave, just like I promised Mommy I would do. I asked my mom for a clean shirt because the vomit is smelly and uncomfortable. But it's impossible. There is nothing clean. There is nothing new. Everything is soiled now. The boat tosses mercilessly. Now we're going side to side. We're not going up and down anymore, but side to side. We are a cork bobbing in the middle of a stormy sea. Water spills on us, not trickles through the wood or sprinkles from the top, but like waves of salt dumped on our heads. There's no need to cover the pit anymore, because we're not in Vietnam anymore. We're in no man's land. The waves keep coming. When I look up at the sky, I only see walls and walls of dark. There is only dark. I open my mouth to scream because I see another wave hover above us before it comes crashing down. I swallow a mouthful of water and vomit again. I hear screaming and crying. I don't know if it's adult or children, but I guess we can cry now since there is no one around to hear us. I lose track of the days. I don't know how many sunrises we've seen. We've had such bad weather that the days and nights are all the same. Dark and full of water. Water from the ocean. Water from the sky. I will drown in water I cannot drink. Days no longer matter. I measure the passage of time between sips of water and pieces of food. I don't remember the last time we ate. I can only think of things relative to degrees of thirst and hunger. At first, hunger was just a nebulous shadow. It creeps in a corner. It lurks there, staring at me, not yet fatal, but very foreboding, and remind me of what's coming next. As the shadow creeps closer, it takes on a more definitive shape. One night, it is a rope, dark and twisting, winding its way around all my organs, like a boa constrictor around an almost dead victim. I am flat and empty. There's no more air, no more resistance. I have no strength left to try. I will close my eyes now. Maybe sleep will come and I can dream of food. Maybe an angel will come and give me some water. Don't worry, Mommy. I'm only closing my eyes, just for a little bit. Those are the memories that I still retain of the boat. And as you can see, 42 years later, recalling those memories still evoke a visceral reaction, as if I was the same 7-year-old girl trapped inside of the pit of the boat. Hungry, thirsty, scared, and desperate. And we would have died at sea had it not been for the compassion of one man who spotted us after 10 days, lost and out of food, out of water, and out of fuel. He was the captain of an oil tanker called the LNG Virgo. And I was 7 years old the time that we were rescued. And when we disembarked the ship, I never learned his name. I didn't speak any English. Throughout the years of growing up, I always heard my parents say that we must find that captain. We must find out who he is and where he is, so we can let him know that we are grateful for his kindness and that we're okay. Thus I embarked on a 30-year search to find the captain and crew of the Virgo. It started when I was accepted to UC Berkeley, and we had no money and 3 kids to send to college, and my parents were pretty clear that I was on my own in terms of my education. So I knew that I had to find scholarships. This was 1991. There was no internet. So I would go to the library and I would fish out these giant binders of scholarships, and I would look for everything. I think at one time I explored being an HVAC mechanic because there was a scholarship for that. But I thought to myself, and as an English learner, a scholarship is just another ship. And if I can get so many scholarships, why can't I find that ship? More trips to the library, more maritime binders. I didn't know the name of the ship. I only knew that my mother would say that we were rescued by the Virgo. In my child's mind, at 7 years old, not knowing English, when she said Virgo, it made perfect sense to me because we're Viet and we go. So thus I was looking for a ship called the Vietgo, Virgo, and no such ship existed. This continued until I believe it was 2007 or 2008, and I was driving my mom somewhere, and she said to me, turn left, turn left. I told you to turn left on Lanai. And I said, Mom, there is no Lanai. That street was Lanier. And she said, I was saying it the French way. So that was a light bulb moment in my head. And I started thinking, if she has been saying Lene in the French way, what else could she have been saying in the French way all these years? So when we got home, I grabbed the nearest piece of paper, which was a napkin and a pen, and I gave it to her and I said, write Virgo, spell it out. And she wrote Virgo. Phew. Now with 2007, we have the internet and you can Google just about anything. So finding the Virgo, finding the ship itself wasn't that terribly difficult because I knew it was a US flagship. I knew what year we were rescued, and now I have the name, and I have a very, very vivid image of what the Virgo looked like. So I just want to take you back just for a second, being a 7-year-old child on the brink of death in a 25-foot wooden boat after 7 days of storm. And here comes the Virgo in all her splendor, almost 94-ton ship, 12 stories high. And I crane my head way back, and I would just think, in Saigon, which is the largest city in South Vietnam, the tallest building was 4 stories high. And here's this ship, 12 stories high. It was beyond imagination. And it had these giant balls, like domes on the deck. So that image was just seared into my mind. So I found the Virgo. Now came the hard part, finding who was on the Virgo at the time I was rescued. And again, years and years of search. And I have to confess that I didn't do this every day, every night after work. I would pick it up and I would hit a dead end and I would put it away. I would pick it up every now and then. But it was at Thanksgiving one year when I saw my parents, and I had by that time had my kids, and there was a continuity there that I realized would not exist, would have been terminated at sea had it not been for one person who gave the command to stop for us. And so it was pedal to the metal time. I worked with a really good friend who works for the California Supreme Court, so he has access to a lot of databases that us mortals don't have access to. And I told him, I said, oh, he's also, he has a boat in Sausalito as well, by coincidence. But anyway, I told him, I said, you know, I think our search terms are too broad. We have to narrow it down. We just can't do these blanket general terms. And so we start brainstorming. And I said, Greg, a corporation this big, this wealthy, with this kind of cargo has to have a highly qualified workforce. So we have to think, who would they hire to command their ships? And who would know this geographical area? Well, it's got to be a Vietnam vet in the Navy. That's no brainer. So then once we had the Vietnam Navy veteran status down and we started narrowing our terms, one day Greg calls me and he says, I have 4 names for you. And my heart just started beating, just like, this is not real. I've been at this since 1991. We're now in 2008. How can it be? And he said, well, I don't know if they are true hits, but I think we're close. So let me give you the names and you do what you do. And you have to know that by this time I had written so many letters. I had written to the company. I had written to General Dynamics, who built the ship. So, you know, I said, okay, I have a phone number. Let's just do it. So I looked at the 4 names and where they were. And I said, okay, U.S. Navy, retired, Merchant Marine, retired. He's got to live in Florida. And there it was, one name in Florida. I cold called him. The moment was really beyond anything I could have imagined. And if you can think, if you had been looking for someone for 30 years, and this is your chance to say what you want to say to him, what would it be? How do you sincerely express what's in your heart without sounding banal or trite? And so I called him. I said, Captain Overstreet, my name is Lauren Vuong. I think that you were the captain who rescued us in 1980. And I don't want anything except to tell you that we're really grateful. And I've been looking for you and we thank you. And I left my phone number and they called me back. As it turns out, George Overstreet was actually the successor of the captain who rescued us. But George was finally able, he gave me the identity of the person I had been searching for 30 years. And so I went on another letter writing campaign because Captain Schoen, Hartmut Schoen, had retired from the fleet in 1989. And I had gotten by this time some names and addresses and phone numbers of people who had worked with Captain Schoen. So I wrote to them all. And I'm talking, you know, I'm not talking about an email. I'm talking about good old fashioned pen to paper. And I would attach my business card. I would attach my family's pictures. I would attach the pictures that Captain Schoen took of us when we were on the Virgo with our names, our date of birth, and the name of the ship. This is so when we disembark, that's how we would be identified. So that the recipient would know that this was not a scam and that I'm serious, check me out, vet me. And on the envelope, I would write to whoever it was, let's say it was Captain Mike Blanton, to Captain Mike Blanton, and I would put in search of Captain Hartmut Schoen, and then in the return area, I would put my name, and I would put LNG Virgo Rescue 1980. So the recipients, all I wanted was for them to open the envelope and read the letter. And I knew that the envelope had to be addressed in such a way that they would know that this is not like some scam, that they were identifying things that they could relate with. And I wrote so many letters. And it wasn't until 2016. I joined Facebook in 2016. It's crazy. And I thought that with the scope of Facebook, someone could help me. I posted one photo of half of us, 31 of us from the boat on the deck. I had had this photo for so many years, and I could see myself. I was just about like the size of the tip of your pinky, a little dot in the picture. And I never noticed anything beyond our group, and that was it. But then my son looked at the picture and he said, "Mommy, this guy must not be one of you. He's the only one with shoes on." And when Justin noticed that, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And it brought home something that I had overlooked all these years, which is at the time of rescue and before disembarkment, we didn't even have shoes. So I posted the picture on the internet, and I said, "Please help me find this man." No one could identify him, but the important thing was they gave me avenues to continue the research. They said, based upon his shirt, he would have been a Kings Point cadet. And based upon the year that this is, it was probably a 1978 graduate. So I went on another writing campaign. I wrote to Kings Point. And I said, "This is what I'm doing. I'm just trying to look for this man because he was present at the time of my rescue. And I just want to say thank you. You know, if you're uncomfortable with giving me your alumni list, then please post my letter in your newsletter. And whoever it is, perchance he sees it, can contact me." One of my letters got to an address that was previously associated with Captain Schoen. But in the year 2002, it had changed hands. And so I thought the logical thing was that he had passed away and they were liquidating assets that they held in the United States. The name had no correlation with Captain Schoen. but I wrote to it anyway. I said, if you bought his house and you know where they are, please forward my letter. If you're still in touch with him or his family, please let him know I've been looking for him. The woman turned out to be his sister-in-law. And that was how I finally tracked down Captain Schoen, who had moved back to Hamburg, Germany in 1989. So that is my quest for finding the Virgo. The documentary in 2018 and 2019, mainly 2019, we were on the film fest circuit and did very well. We were nominated for 9 awards, and we won 7, including the Audience Choice, which at CAM, we beat 1,000 films to get that award. We got gold at International Independent. We were in London, in Paris, and had it not been for COVID, we would probably have continued that streak. But I would like to show you now a little trailer of Finding the Virgo and open it up for questions and answers. I know I only talked about my experience on the boat and being rescued, but Finding the Virgo actually gives context of this phenomenon of the boat people, why we were even taking that chance and risking our lives in the first place. So Russell, if you could roll the trailer.
Sure, I'll be glad to. Just one second.
I started looking for the captain of this liquefied natural gas carrier that rescued my family from the South China Sea in 1980.
We found no food. If I remember right, the water was down to almost nothing.
The Vietnamese who were lucky enough to leave with those American vessels can only forecast the dark years to come for those of us left behind.
We were on the ocean for 10 days. Many ships went by, and we tried to flag, we tried to put the fire on just to get their attention so they can help us, but no help.
The buckets that were passed around to catch vomit didn't quite make it in time all the time. I think we all tried, but we were confined to the pit and the merciless tossing of the boat.
When Kenny and I come up to the main deck, we were nauseated.
Our lives would have ended there within days, on the ocean, in the darkness of storms, hunger, and desperation. We would have been like the million other boat refugees who never made it to shore. Their voices were extinguished forever.
2007, with the help of the internet and a really good researcher, we found George Overstreet. I left this message and I said, Captain Overstreet, my name is Lauren Vuong. I think you were the captain who saved our lives in 1980. I just wanted to call and tell you that I've been looking for you. And I want to thank you. At last. At last.
At last.
Thank you.
I don't consider myself, a hero. I think what the people on those boats went through, I think you people are the heroes.
Thank you, Russell. And I also just, please let me have the opportunity of thanking Russell for all your help and making me feel welcome and tech appropriate. And thank you, Tom and Lynne, for the introduction. And of course, Gil and Carla for making this happen. I'm so happy to be here. Any questions?
Yes, we have the first question from Tom. Go ahead and unmute, Tom.
Well, thank you, Lord. My first question is, and I'm choked up also. When your boat left Vietnam, were you alone? Were you in a small flotilla, a small fleet of boats, or just solo?
We were alone. It was a fishing boat that was registered to a Viet Cong official. And we, air quote, bought the boat. We paid for it, and we also hijacked him. So that my mom doesn't like me to talk about this because she says it makes us look like criminals, but I think it makes us look incredibly resourceful. We kidnapped him because, number one, he could help us on the boat. We were all landlocked people. What business did we have in the middle of the ocean? And number two, if it really came to it, we could have used him as a hostage. So we were alone. It was a very secret operation. And there was no one else. There were 62 of us on the boat.
62.
And how long was the boat again?
It was like
Roughly?
25, 30 feet, wooden. You can see, I mean, the pictures that are in the trailer was actually my boat, because when I found Ken Nelson, which is one of the engineers who spoke, his wife happened to be throwing a party for their 40th anniversary. So she came across all these photos of rescues from his years at sea. And he asked me, he said, well, this would have been around the same time. Can you tell me which one you were? And my mother and father and I took a magnifying glass to the image, and we identified ourselves. So that was actually my boat.
Wow.
Lauren, could you, I understand your mom said that every time I have something good to eat, I think of those men. Is that part of that?
Yes.
That's quite a statement.
It is. And yes, thank you for reminding me of that, because that truly is exactly what she said all the time. And especially at family gatherings, like at Thanksgiving, she would say, you know, we wouldn't have this, we wouldn't be eating this if it weren't for the people who rescued us. So it made a very deep impression in my mind from a very young age. And my father, who is, you know, he was a prisoner after Saigon fell. He was held in re-education, which is basically a concentration camp, for 4 years. And still, he was a very gentle person, very gentle, very kind spirit. And he would tell me that you must always remember your heritage and your language, because it is who you are. It is the fabric of our being. And he would tell me, in particular, when we were talking about Virgo, he would say, look at the words in Vietnamese for gratitude. It's made up of 2 words, ơn nghĩa, which means gratitude and honor. So if you had gratitude, you were a person with honor. And if you had no gratitude, you are without honor by construction. And so he said, you know, we have the life we have. We've raised you to be honorable, respectful people. Do not forget what gave us this opportunity in this life.
Awesome. Sandra, I think you have a question next.
Yes, I want to thank you for your presentation. It was extraordinarily moving. And I'm glad you were found. Now, do you know where, I have a ton of questions. Do you know where you were picked up? How long were you aboard the Virgo? Where did you disembark? And what kind of greeting did you have when you were disembarking?
Sandra, we could talk for hours. Where did we leave from? We left from the Mekong Delta. splits out and then into the sea. So officially the SYC River, we were heading towards the Philippines, which is directly east. We estimated that normally it would take 5 to 7 days. We planned for 8. Third day in, Tropical Storm Herbert hit, and that was why we were blown off course. And the reason why I know that it was called Tropical Storm Herbert was when I found Captain Schoen's widow. She gave me his ship logs. She had this suitcase of his years at sea and letters from people that he had rescued. And so she found exactly the ship log the day that we were rescued. And so I was able to see the location of where we were rescued. And it was very far north of our destination. It would be the equivalent of San Diego to San Francisco. And the next landmass that we would have seen had we slipped out to the Pacific would have been Taiwan. So we were decimated. We had fuel for about 6 or 7 hours left, and we were just floating there. We just didn't think that we would ever make landfall. So we are on the Virgo only for 2 or 3 days. And this, I have no time recollection of how long we were there. This is what was told to me based upon the research that I reconstructed. And we were on the Virgo for about 2 or 3 days. And then on the third day, a ship called the Sea Lift Antarctic, which is a vessel that services Navy ships. So she goes out there and refuels the big tankers and so forth. Noticed that the Virgo was kind of idling in the middle of the ocean, and radio's over. Virgo, are you in distress? And Captain Schoen says, I'm not in distress. I have 62 Vietnamese refugees on board. I have flammable cargo, and I'm trying to pick up another boat from the ocean. I just don't know what to do with them because I don't have port rights in Singapore, which was the nearest port at the time. So Doug Torborg says, well, I'm US Navy. I have port rights everywhere. So I will take your 62 on board and I will get the ones from the water. So Virgo starts to pull out so that Sea Lift can come in, and the other boat of refugees saw their lifeline withdraw. So they started to jump into the water to try and swim after the Virgo. And so Doug Torborg tells me that he not only had to rescue people from the boat, he had to fish them out of the water too. So that was how we came to be on board the Sea Lift Antarctic, which you saw in the picture of our black and white rescue pictures. And Sea Lift took us to Singapore. That was when we departed. So I want to say a little bit about Doug Torborg, because how I found Doug was just serendipitous. I told you that I had gone through so many maritime binders and combing through logs and microfiche and anything, any lead I had, I would chase. Well, finally I came across a Union newspaper article called the Seafarer's Log. And I had seen other articles that talked about rescues, but this one, everything matched up. The time frame, the names, and then I knew by then the captain, Sean, was captain of the Virgo, but this article mentioned this other man named Doug Torborg from the Sea Lift Antarctic. So I said, well, I've never heard that name before. So I Googled it. And, you know, in 2016, Google is magic because up came Doug's LinkedIn page. It turns out that he's still active. He is now an expert witness in maritime litigation. And up came his LinkedIn page and another Florida phone number and address. And so I cold call him too. I was in court the day that Doug called me back. And I was waiting for my turn, and I think I might have dropped an F-bomb. because it was like, what? So I excused myself from the courtroom and I went into the hall to call Doug back. He says to me, the first thing he says to me is, young lady, you have to think about what you say to an old man. What? And he said, imagine I come home on the answering machine and says, sir, you don't know me, but I've been looking for you for 30 years. I live in San Francisco. And he said, the first thing I said was, oh shit, where's my wife? He thought I was looking for my dad. But listening to the rest of the message, he quickly put what the matter was. And when he called me, he asked me, would you like your rescue ledger? And I said, had you kept it all these years? And he said, 10 years ago, I hired an attorney and asked him how I could find you guys, how I could find you and make sure that you're okay. And that what he said moved me deeply, because not only had he taken us to safety, he was still concerned about our well-being. So he sent me our rescue ledger, and it had like the dot matrix with the perforated side. And it listed everybody's name and age and profession. And there I was, my name, my age, 7, my profession, student. But it was really at that moment of holding that document in my hands, it was no longer a story that we told at Thanksgiving. It was history. It was documented. It was a government document, and it happened. It happened. You know, I didn't dream it. I didn't fabricate it. I didn't think it. It happened. And so to hold history as something that's tangible makes it real. It validates your life. It validates your struggle. It validates your gratitude. I'm sorry that was such a long answer.
It's a good answer. One of the questions that popped up at the bottom of the screen was, why did they stop with all the other boats passing by? Why did this ship stop for you?
That's a wonderful question. And so the founder of ETC, the Energy Transportation Corporation, which owned 8 sister ships, all named after constellations, he was also a refugee from China during the pre-World War II Japanese invasion. And so he wrote in the company charter that his captains could use their own discretion whether to stop or not. In the article that I had talked about, the Seafarer's Log, it noted that 120 ships passed us during the time that we were at sea. The same time, same route. Whoa. And none of them stopped. And it was the 121st ship that validated what it means to have a human connection with other people.
A question just popped up asking where you landed in the U.S.
I don't want to give everything away in the film, because I think the film will speak for itself. But our port of entry was Seattle, so we went from Indonesia, where we were at refugee camp for 6 months, to Singapore, where we were only there for a week to be processed and get on the plane. And then from Singapore, it was to Seattle, and that was our port of entry. And then from Seattle to San Jose was where we eventually settled.
So, Lauren, I'm assuming that sometime down the road, we're going to have the film Finding Virgo on the screen at the Yacht Club.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. Stay tuned. Carla
Okay.
and I are already
That would
talking
be
about it.
perfect.
Oh, good,
Yay.
good, good.
There was another question. I'm reading these little questions at the bottom of the screen. This one was, what are your lives like now? What are you doing now? Is that part of that? You want to say that for the movie?
No, I mean, that's my life is great. I get a live concert every night at 5:30, courtesy of Lynne. I have an older brother who works in IT. He's a project manager. I have a younger sister who's a pharmacist, and I'm a practicing attorney. We pay taxes. We report for jury duty. We recycle.
How very American.
So I think we're just, the American dream.
You also have a husband and 2 wonderful children.
I do, and I don't want to forget them. They're great.
Any more questions? Well, with that, Tom?
Actually, Russell, I'm just going to ask a question. This is Mary. And sorry, I'm not doing it in the chat, but Lauren, what are your parents doing? Tell us about your parents now. How are their lives?
My mom is wonderful. She's healthy and fiery, scary. She lives in San Jose. This pandemic has been a little hard for her. My dad passed away in late 2019. So yeah, we miss him. And I think my mom is really lonely without him. It's hard during the pandemic too. Would you like me to tell you a funny story that really represents who my mom is?
Yes, please.
So earlier I said that we had kidnapped the Viet Cong fishermen. And I asked my mom, I said, Mom, how do you kidnap a Viet Cong official? And she looked at me like I'm the biggest idiot in the world. And she says, how you would kidnap any man with boobs and booze. So she said that, they hired a pretty girl and poured him lots of strong drinks and then drugged him, hogtied him, threw him on the boat. So if you ever meet my mom, be warned.
Oh, wow.
Lauren, I have a question. Do you have any family left in Vietnam?
Yes. We have all our extended family is back in Vietnam. And in fact, this project was really hard for me to do because the reality is that I was taking the chance that I would never go back to Vietnam again. Because I was so afraid that the government there would see this as some kind of, like anti-government subversive film. So when we went back to scatter my dad's ashes, I was so scared that I would be held.
And could they have held you? Is it?
Yes.
They could have held you. Yes.
They could have. Yes.
Even though you're an American citizen.
Well, under a different administration, I would have been less scared. But because the State Department had been so depleted, I was very nervous about if I had gotten into trouble, what kind of resources would be available to me and what kind of intervention would come my way. I was very nervous. I didn't even bring my phone. I brought nothing.
Okay.
Lauren?
Yes.
First of all, your presentation tonight was as moving for me as it was when I heard you speak a couple of months ago up into our club in Nevada. So it is so touching and I think so poignant for all of us. Could you talk a little bit about the Vietnamese community here in the area, in Marin and San Francisco, and what that's like, and how many people have stories somewhat like yours, and how tight that community is?
Gil, you ask the kind of questions that require a treatise to answer.
Okay, sorry.
The Vietnamese American community in this area is incredibly strong. I think we are second only in the world to Orange County in terms of number population. And everybody in some way or another is connected to a boat person. We built the community. We came here, we built the community, and then sponsored our families to come. I remember when we came here in November of 1980, we couldn't find a bottle of fish sauce. I mean, that is like the foundation of Vietnamese cooking. I mean, the closest thing we found was soy sauce. And now look at the community. It's bustling, it's thriving. What I find challenging, to be honest, about this film and when I started it was how difficult it was to talk to people who came later and to convince them of the hardships, of the terror of being a boat person. And you can see that even 40 years later, I can't talk about it. I mean, there are still foods that I can't eat. There are smells that make the hair on the back of my neck rise. But for some reason, the people who came later think that we exaggerate to, because the Vietnamese way is to have a strong spine, look forward, forget the past, and build up, build forward, build strong, but don't look at what is behind you. And I ask you, if we don't look behind, how are we going to avoid the obstacles in front? And if we don't teach our children, how are they to know the hardships and the struggles of their ancestors? And that's why, holding that rescue ledger that Doug sent me was something that's incredibly real, for lack of a better word. I can show this document to my children. And I can say, here it is, the things that grandma and grandpa have told you over the years is not a story. It's not I walked to school in the snow and the sandstorm, up hills both ways. No, that's not it. It's, but I see that our time is dwindling, and there's nothing worse than someone who overstays her welcome. So let me please thank you so much for giving me this platform, for listening, for being such a sympathetic and empathetic audience. I look forward to bringing Virgo to you in full, and I hope that we will see each other soon in person.
Well, Lauren, in closing, thank you. And we look forward to having you and your family and your movie at the Saucer Yacht Club. Please be our guests. Okay.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Drink your wine now.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much, Lauren.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lauren.